Hey there, crazy kids. I am the Good Old Gamer, and welcome to Steamed. This, of course, is the introductory video for a new concept series that I've had in mind for quite some time now. Because this is a different from what I've had on my channel previously, actual gameplay will begin with the next video in this series. I've set aside this particular video to help make sure everyone will be on the same page for the future episodes to come. So, what is Steamed? Well, to put it simply, for each episode, we'll take a 20-minute first look at a different game from my extensive Steam library, and finish with my first impressions of that featured game, and you can form your own as well, assuming you haven't played the game already. Now, that's the brief synopsis, straight and to the point for those of you who want me to be concise. From this point on, if you wish, you can continue to the gameplay videos and have a general idea about how they will go. However, please continue to watch and listen to this video if you would like more details on this series. Like I've mentioned already, it is a new concept for my channel, and there are some guidelines I've developed and would like to share with you if you've got the time and patience to bear with me. This is where I begin to ramble a bit. Alright, so let's get into the nitty-gritty details here. First off, I want to address the 20-minute length that I've sort of developed for each episode. Now, I've had lots of discussions in pre-development when it comes to where I should begin these first impressions, how long should I have them for, should I jump ahead in a game past tutorial levels, all these sorts of things, and I've come to the conclusion that because every game is different in terms of length and that sort of thing. Some games can be completed in a matter of a couple hours. Some games can take 200 hours to get through. It's not fair to either sort of game for me to jump around. In a game like Skyrim, for example, if I were to jump an hour ahead and skip the first few quests or whatever, and get my character really deep into the world, I've already gained some first impressions prior to hitting the record button, if you understand my meaning. Whereas if I played a game like Portal, because the game is so short, I would have to begin the first impressions video immediately. I do a disservice to Portal for not giving it as much time as I gave to Skyrim, and I'm doing a disservice to Skyrim by skipping all of that world building introduction stuff that begins at the beginning of the world, that brings you into the world. And it's not fair on either end, honestly. And at the end of the day, I have built my channel to be fair to the games. Me and what I would like to do comes second to the games themselves, to showcase the games. And because this is going to be a first impression series, I want it to be an even first impressions for each game. So, that said, every episode is going to consist of me hitting the start button or play button, whatever, on each game. Beginning the game, going through the first 20 minutes. I'll have a timer and everything, so when the timer goes off, that's the end of it. I'll stop, pause the game, whatever, give my first impressions, and then that'll be it for each and every game I feature. And like I said, I want to be fair to the games. I want to give each game an introductory chance. I want to give each game the same chances to impress me, to draw me in, or to, push me away if they're not that great. Also, 20 minutes is a reasonable length for a video. And so I expect each of these videos in this series to be about 25 to 30 minutes, give or take a few minutes here or there, because there's going to be an introduction, there's going to be the final wrap-up with my first impressions after having played the game. When it comes to games like RPGs, there may be a little bit of extra time here or there to create characters, that sort of thing. So I'm guessing about 25-30 minutes will be a reasonable expectation for video length. Tutorials may be included depending on if they are in the game or not. If they are separate from the game, such as in FTL, where they're their own little separate thing, and then you've got the main portion of the game, then the tutorials probably won't be featured. Whereas if they are directly in the game, like in Fallout New Vegas, and you've got the first few quests as kind of tutorial levels, those would be included because they're part of the introduction, part of bringing in new characters to the world and getting used to controls and that sort of thing. I don't see tutorials as a bad thing or negative when it comes to first impressions for these games. I see tutorials as the developer's opportunity to bring new players in, to get everybody situated into the world, to provide good introductions. Some people think that tutorials should be ignored when it comes to first impressions because they're usually easier in terms of like combat or puzzles or whatever the case may be, and they're usually probably more scripted than the more random sort of events that happen later on. Like I said, I see them as good introductions. It's a way for the developers to pull me into the game or to push me away. And so if they're a part of the game, that's going to be included. But the decision on whether or not they will be included usually depends on whether they're past the start button or play button, or before. If they're before, they probably won't be. If they're after, they probably will. Because again, it's the first 20 minutes from the hitting the start button until the 20 minutes are up for whatever the game includes, whether that's cutscenes, gameplay, tutorials, dialogues, whatever. So that addresses the 20-minute length. I know some people would like me to jump ahead in some games, but I'm just going to be fair across the board. I think that's the smoothest way to handle everything. Now, I'm going to talk about a few things that will not be counted on in that 20-minute limit. Like, if I've already started the game and then this portion of what I'm going to be talking about happens, I will pause the timer until we're past that portion and get right back into the game, and then I'll begin the timer again to finish out the time. What I'm talking about is what I am going to call metagaming. This means having to deal with things outside of the game world itself. This can be character creation when it comes mostly to RPGs, where you usually create a character and then you hit the start button to go play and into the game. Or it can be things like messing with the controls and the setup in the settings, graphics and everything to try and tweak performance or whatever. If I encounter any of that stuff, I will pause the timer, stop the timer, complete all that stuff, and start the timer again. Because this is a first impression series of the game itself, not necessarily of these outside aspects like creating a character. Creating a character especially would be the metagaming that I would definitely not count towards that 20-minute limit, because if you guys have seen me play these games that have character creation like Mass Effect, Fallout, Skyrim, I can easily spend the whole entire video just on the character creation, because I can, on a good character creation system, I could stay there for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour, easy. So I'm not going to count that towards the video time that I'm going to give. That said, I'm also not going to have an hour and a half long video for every time there's a character creation portion of a game. I'm going to sort of begin the character creation on the video for you guys, kind of get a good idea of it. Then I'm going to pause the video, create the actual character or characters, depending on the game, and then come back into the video at the very end of that and kind of show you my final character and stuff. And I will include character creation in my first impressions analysis, but not to the highest extent. It's a lot of my first impressions is going to depend on the game itself. Now, metagaming for me in this instance does not include introductory cutscenes or again tutorials, because those are part of the game. Those are part of the time that the developer has to introduce you into the game, to pull you into the game, to keep you playing the game. So I will include those in the time length of the video, because as soon as I hit play, the time starts, and as long as it's part of the world, part of building the world, part of pulling you into the world, part of the setting, part of the plot, whatever you want to call it, it's going to be in there. Metagaming in this instance does not include loading times either. I'm not going to pause the video while the game's loading and then start it back up again as soon as the game's loaded, because loading times are part of the first impressions. Whether we like it or not, some games have extraordinarily long times for loading, and that does impact first impressions. I haven't played Bloodborne, but I've been told that when Bloodborne first came out, it had like 45-second to a minute worth of loading time every time you died. And Bloodborne is one of those Dark Souls type games where you die a lot. And so that gave a less than positive impression to people. If I come across a game like that where there's an extensive load time, that could give a negative impression. That is part of the impressions process. This is not about the best parts of a game. This is about the first impressions. This is positive, negative, the whole works. Metagaming in this instance also does not include things like in-game inventory management. I know a lot of Let's Players kind of cut out inventory management or leveling up a character, these sorts of, I don't know what you want to call it, like mundane tasks in the game. They cut it out because they don't think it's entertaining enough or interesting enough or whatever. But it's all part of the first impressions process. This series is not a Let's Play series. This series is a first 20 minutes, first impressions look at the entirety of a game. The introduction of it. So inventory management is going to be included in the time limit and everything. It's a part of the process. I don't expect in the introductory first 20 minutes of a game to have much in the way of inventory management anyway. I don't think I've ever encountered a game where I've had a lot of inventory management to start, but just saying that's going to be part of it. Now, on to another aspect of this series. Each episode will feature a different game from my game library. I won't have multiple videos in a row of a single game. It's going to be the first 20 minutes of that game, and then the next video I'm going to move on to a different game and do the first 20 minutes of that game, first impressions and everything. I may get to revisit a game later, but I'll get into that in a moment. Just because a game is featured in this series does not necessarily mean that this game will guarantee a Let's Play of it on my channel. Meaning, just because I feature a game in this series in terms of first impressions, that does not mean I'm going to end up playing out the game in its entirety on my channel in a different series, in its own series. I could get into this game really playing it and want to play out more, so I could end up saying, you know what, okay, I'm going to make a Let's Play series out of this. We'll feature the whole thing on my channel. Or if you guys convince me that you really like it and you want to see me play more of it, that could be a factor, but it does not guarantee it. These are solely first impression videos. They are a means in which you and I can determine if we like the games and determine if maybe we do want to continue it. But they are by no means a guarantee. They're their own individual sorts of things. So I just wanted to put that out there. I'm not worried about running out of new games to feature. Going from one game in one video to the new game in the next video to a new game in the next video. I have almost 700 games in my Steam library to choose from. Whether that's good or bad, you can decide for yourself, but that's going to last me a long time in this series. And the amount of games I have now will not be the same amount of games I have in the future. It is a growing process, my library is. I acquire new games as Steam has good sales. So, yeah, I'm always going to have games for this series. I'm not worried about that, and neither should you be. Um, Also, for the most part, these games I'm going to be entering in blind. I won't know anything about these games other than what's on the Steam page for them, their store page or whatever. So I'll have their trailer, then, I've seen their trailers, I've seen the screenshots, I've read the little descriptions on the store page. I've maybe even read some of the customer reviews, although you don't really want to trust those on Steam because they're pretty biased and crazy, but that'll be all my information for the most part. Most of these games I'll be pretty blind to, other than the usual hearsay and stuff if they happen to be really popular games. So, with that said, my gameplay is not going to be perfect. If you're expecting elite, hardcore gaming on this channel, you must be new because I've never been that way. Even with games I played dozens of times. I played Minecraft for I don't know how many years now, and I'm not all that great at it. But it's gonna be fun for me anyway to experience these new games. Even if I'm not great at the controls, even if I have to take time to get used to the controls, even if I fumble around and stuff, for the most part, I'm not going to count that against the game. The fact that I'm not perfect at it or that I may die a lot or whatever. Um, the only factors I would put into the game in terms of first impressions would be if the controls themselves are really crappy, if they're really laggy, if they don't have a certain smoothness to them, that sort of thing. Otherwise, if it's just me being stupid, it's me being stupid, and I won't count that against the game. Hopefully you guys enjoy the gameplay that I provide, but don't expect it to be perfect because it won't be. I'm going to be stumbling around, but it's going to be fun. At least I hope it is. All right. In terms of what games I'm going to have in this series, I'm going to try and stay away from sequels to games being featured in the series unless they're not direct sequels. And by that I mean unless they're games like similar to like how Fallout 3 was a sequel to Fallout 1 and 2, but it wasn't a direct sequel. It was set in the same setting, had sort of the same themes, but you could jump into Fallout 3 without ever having played Fallout 1 and 2 and be just fine. I did. I've never played Fallout 1 and 2, and I played Fallout 3 just fine, got into it just fine. It's a perfect standalone game, even though technically it is a sequel, because it takes place in the same universe. Those are the only kinds of sequels that I would probably feature in this series, and I don't think there are that many of them. I think most sequels tend to be more directly tied into the original games of those specific franchises, and I don't want to play through those introductions of those sequels because sequel introductions tend to be rehashes of the previous game. They tend to catch up new players from where the previous game left off. They tend to be continuations of the previous story. They tend to include a lot of spoilers, and if I haven't played the first game, I don't want to be spoiled by the introduction to the sequel, and I don't want you guys to be spoiled if you haven't played those games either. I want this to be a blind first impressions, and so I kind of want to steer clear of those. But indirect sequels, you might see them on here. I don't know. Because I'm going into most of these games blind, I don't really know if I'll be able to determine if a sequel is direct or not. So don't expect to see sequels, but if they show up here and there, it's because they're not direct to the or previous games in their series. All right, so what else? After a time, I may revisit an already featured game if it was originally in early access, maybe even still in early access, and it's received some major updates from when I first featured it. I don't have many early access games because I don't really like that sort of situation where you may record a video for a certain game and then a couple months later it's gotten some major updates and looks completely different and your video is outdated and giving false information and all that stuff. But I do have a few of them, so that may be a possibility for me to revisit a series revisit a video in the series if that would occur. I may also revisit a video in this series if I um, if I receive feedback from you, the audience, on key elements I may have missed. Now, I don't expect this to be a situation happen often either, but if I'm playing some game and you guys give feedback, well, if you'd have went down this path instead, you would have had a much better time here and there and whatever. Or if you would have played with a gamepad, controller instead of the keyboard and mouse, you would have had a much better time with the controls. You may have even progressed farther in the game in the same amount of time, that sort of thing. That may convince me, but I don't expect that to really happen very often. I may even revisit a game that I've already featured in the series if you guys can convince me that an extended look, i.e. an extra 20 minutes in sequence to the original video, would be beneficial. Like if I recorded a game for the first 20 minutes, but then I received feedback from you guys, well, if you'd have gone 5 minutes more, you would have come up to the first big boss fight. Or you would have come to you would have been able to finish the quest that you've got going on if you would have just played for another 10 more minutes or whatever. In certain situations like that, I may be convinced to revisit a game to include an extended second sort of video to continue on where I left off before, but that again is going to be a rare instance and it's not going to happen very often. Generally speaking, most of the games featured in this steamed series are going to be one-shot videos. They're going to be the first impressions, and that's going to be it, and I'm going to move on to the next one. So like I said, they won't happen very often, but they're possible. Don't be surprised if eventually down the road in this series a revisit happens. It probably won't happen immediately. I kind of want to build up the series first before I start revisiting games that I've already featured, but that can come down the line. So, all in all that said and done, why does this series exist? Like I said, I have an extensive Steam library, nearly 700 games as of this recording, and I kind of want to make use of them. Even if I only play 20 minutes of each game, that's still accomplishing more than having those games just sit in my library doing nothing, providing nothing, Don't get me wrong, I don't mind that I have them. In fact, I'm quite comfortable being a collector of games. Just having them in my library, just being accessible, is more than enough for me to justify getting them in the first place. I just like knowing I have them ready and there. But it would be nice to say I played this game or that game or that game, even if it's just the introduction. So that's one reason. Another reason why I have this series and why I want to keep it going is because it will provide variety for my channel. If I have even 20 videos for this series, that's 20 different games that I've played out on my channel for you guys to check out. Maybe these will be games that you haven't seen before, haven't heard of. Maybe it will provide you with games that you might want to play or you might want to steer clear of. Who knows? And at the very least, like I've already mentioned, it may provide you and I with a means to determine what I should play next on my channel. I might really get into a game and that might branch off into its own Let's Play and that sort of thing. So it provides variety, it provides new entertainment, it provides something I haven't done before, it provides an interesting challenge for me and something new for you. So it's hopefully a win-win all around. By the way, if you haven't already guessed, the visuals that you've been watching in this video while I've been rambling on and on have been pictures, or screenshots I should say, of my Steam library. Most of them are games. A few of them are like one-off videos or graphic novels that won't be featured in this series, but most of them are games that have the potential to be featured in this series. So you guys will have kind of an idea of what may be to come, what sort of games I'm into, what sort of games are in my library. And so, yeah, there you go. Um, Obviously, this is a list of games that I have in my library right now as of this recording, like I've already mentioned. My library tends to grow every time there's a decent Steam sale on a game that I want to get. So this is not the complete listing, but it is a listing I've got now. Um, some games are included in that listing that I've already played out, like Sleeping Dogs or FTL. Obviously, those games will not be featured in this first impressions video because they're beyond the first impressions by this point. So just bear that in mind. Um, but like I said, being able to show those games to you in that listing will give you guys a good idea of what may be to come. And feel free in the comments below to, if you see a game in that list that you would like me to feature, that you know I haven't played out here on the channel before, feel free to post it in the comments below, and that can be taken into consideration. Again, it's no guarantee that it will be part of the series, but it would be nice to see what sort of feedback I get from this. And I guess that should cover everything that I can think of for now, at least. I hope this gives you a better idea of what's to come, or if you've already seen a gameplay episode of this because you're watching this from the future and I've directed you to this introductory video to answer your questions, I hope this helps to clarify things for you. Thanks for watching, Crazy Kids. I hope this interests you as much as it does me, and we'll have to see where we go from here. I am the Good Old Gamer, and this has been the introduction to Steamed. Next time we'll have some actual gameplay. We'll have the first official series next time. First official episode, I should say, next time. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye for now.